Ever wonder why someone, in their 20s or 30s, right in the thick of their career, would just up and leave a big city?
Yeah, trade all that energy for somewhere, well, quieter, a place people often think of as more maybe rural.
Exactly. That's precisely the question we're diving into today. We're going to explore the reasons and the real-life stuff that happens when young people move from places like Taipei to Taitung.
And the cool thing is, we're doing this based on a real conversation. We have this recording of two people who actually did it, these island migrants, you could call them.
Yeah, island migrants. It gives us a really personal look, doesn't it?
Totally.
Yes.
Their stories, their experiences.
So our mission for you listening is to really get into why they made such a huge change, what pulled them there.
And what challenges popped up, what were the good surprises?
Right, because it's clearly not just about, swapping buildings for beaches. It feels like something deeper, like a shift in what they value.
It really does. So let's paint a quick picture of these two individuals we'll be talking about based on the source. The first one, they moved to Taitung around, 27, 28?
Yeah, after being up north for like a decade, uni, work.
Right, and they'd actually been teaching in Sanchong for 12 years. That's a really dense part of Taipei.
Wow, 12 years.
And a big reason for moving back. Housing costs. Much cheaper, relatively speaking. Plus, they just felt overwhelmed by the crowds, the lack of space.
I can imagine. Sanchong is intense. And the second person?
A bit different. Moved back around their early 30s. Their family had actually moved to Taitung when they were just 3.
Oh, okay. So they grew up there.
Yeah, until 18. Then went north for uni and work, like a lot of people do. But they decided to return because, well, they wanted a different vibe. Felt kind of stuck.
Stuck. Even in a good job.
Yeah, seems like it. Comfortable. Maybe too comfortable. They wanted a change, a challenge.
Interesting. And just for context, this chat we're drawing from, it happened April 26th, right? In the morning.
That's right, down in Taitung. One of the speakers was actually there for a triathlon.
So Taitung life was literally happening around them. Okay, let's dig into those initial reasons. The pull factors. Housing was number 1 for the first speaker, you said?
Yeah, explicitly. Cheaper housing compared to Sanchong, that was huge.
And even if prices have gone up a bit in Taitung since then, it's still like way more space for your money than Taipei, right?
Oh, absolutely. That relative affordability, getting more breathing room, literally, that's a massive draw. It's that trade-off, isn't it? Pace for space.
Totally. And that breathing room thing wasn't just about the house itself.
No, not at all. The first speaker talked about just feeling crushed by the number of people in Sanchong. The traffic, too.
They mentioned that motorcycle waterfall image on the bridges.
Yeah. Really paints a picture, doesn't it? And just never seeing the horizon. That feeling of being hemmed in.
Yeah, the constant sensory overload. You can see why escaping that would be appealing.
It's that pull towards, open space, maybe a bit more nature. It gets draining after a while.
And then there's that shift in priorities that often happens, right? As you get a bit older, maybe late 20s, 30s.
Definitely. Maybe you've got some financial stability. You're not just hustling for the next paycheck anymore.
And suddenly, things like family or just feeling happy day-to-day, quality of life, they start creeping up the list.
Right. It's not just about the career ladder or the salary anymore. Maybe thinking about where you'd want to raise kids, if that's on the cards. Your definition of success kind of evolves.
Makes sense. More about like holistic well-being.
Yeah, exactly. A more balanced life. And for the first speaker, family was part of that too.
Right. Their parents were still in Taipei.
Yeah. And they worried about being able to get them medical help quickly if needed. Being back in Taitung felt closer, even if geographically further in some ways. It's about support.
That's a really practical human concern. Being there for family.
Hugely relatable. It influences so many big decisions.
It's okay. So the second speaker, their motivation felt a bit different, more about feeling stagnant.
Yeah, that's the word they used. Boredom, stagnation. They had a good job, tenure even, but felt like they were in a rut.
So it wasn't escaping something bad necessarily, but seeking something new.
Exactly. Proactively looking for a different environment, a different pace. They specifically wanted somewhere less crowded with a coast.
The Pacific Ocean calling.
Yep. Wanted to see the ocean. Big contrast to Sanchong, obviously. And it was also about challenging themselves, apparently.
How so?
They felt they'd become a bit rigid, maybe too set in their ways. Moving was a way to force themselves to be more adaptable.
That takes some self-awareness. choosing discomfort for growth.
It really does. It's not just changing location, it's changing yourself.
And they also had good memories of Taitung from before,
Yeah.
right? Like hiking and cycling.
Yeah, those positive past experiences definitely played a role. Hiking the Alanji Historic Trail, cycling. Those memories create an emotional pull.
So it wasn't just an idea. It was rooted in actual good feelings about the place.
Precisely. A sense of connection already existed.
Okay, so they make the move, all these compelling reasons. But then reality hits, right? What were some of the unexpected hurdles or adjustments?
Well, interestingly, the first speaker, even though they grew up there, felt a kind of reverse culture shock.
Really? Going back home?
Yeah. After so long in the north, they found the way people were physically close in Taipei, but maybe emotionally distant. That was the initial shock.
Huh. Explain that a bit more.
Like, you're surrounded by millions, but it's hard to connect. That loneliness in a crowd thing, everyone's just so busy.
Right. Head down, getting on with things.
Exactly. And they remembered Taitung having a much closer community feel growing up, so that contrast was jarring at first.
I can see that. The difference between just being near people and actually connecting.
And then there was the pace. Both of them mentioned the slower pace of life in Taitung.
A big shift from Taipei, I bet.
Oh, yeah. The second speaker called it a shock to the system, coming from that super efficiency-driven mindset up north.
How did that show up day to day?
Little things. Like waiting at traffic lights, people maybe aren't gunning it the second it turns green. There was an anecdote about a minor fender bender.
Oh, yeah?
At Zhonghua and Seaway Road. Someone just kind of proceeded slowly, even though the rules might say otherwise. It baffled them initially.
Huh. A different rhythm entirely.
Totally. And it connects to those local ideas like Manhu Slow Fire and Shengyin, that sort of relaxed feeling.
Oh, okay. Maybe the climate plays into that.
Hmm.
And dealing with typhoons like Nepartak, you got to be adaptable.
Could be. A
Oh,
sense
okay.
of just rolling with things a bit more, which ties into the community aspect, too. They talked about a strong tribal feeling,
Tribal feeling. What do they mean by that?
like really strong local groups and connections, which is great for finding friends and support.
But there's always a but.
But it can also mean, getting pulled into local disagreements or finding it hard if you're not in the right group.
Ah, okay. Like that example of the student struggling to find work outside their family circle?
Exactly. Those tight networks can be amazing, but also a bit insular, maybe? Makes it potentially harder for outsiders or even locals without the right connections.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about money? People always assume moving out of the big city means saving loads.
Yeah, that's a common myth, apparently. They really pushed back on that.
So Taitung isn't automatically cheaper.
Not necessarily, especially for things like eating out. Because so much stuff, even veggies and fruit, has to be transported in.
The logistics tax.
Pretty much. So restaurant prices can end up being kind of similar to Taipei sometimes.
So how do you save money then?
They suggested 3 main ways. 1, use your connections family, community for local produce, maybe direct from farms.
And can leverage the network.
2, cook at home more often, obvious, but crucial there. And 3, just be aware that labor costs in services can be relatively high.
Right, so it takes effort. It's not just magically cheaper.
Nope, you got to be intentional. It challenges that whole romantic, cheap, rural life idea.
Okay, good reality check. What about services? Education, healthcare. Any challenges there?
Yeah, definitely. Kindergartens were a big one they mentioned.
Hard to get into.
Especially public or semi-public ones. There are prioritization policies, often for indigenous families or new residents, which makes sense, but
But it makes it tough for others.
it can. They shared this story about struggling to get their second kid into the same preschool their first kid was already in.
Wow, that sounds incredibly stressful for parents.
Totally. Something you really need to research beforehand if you have young kids. Don't just assume it'll be easy.
What about primary schools?
Generally more places than kids overall, they thought, but the popular schools, still competitive, so location still matters.
Okay. And healthcare. Is it good quality?
Quality seems generally fine, yeah, but the issue is often wait times.
Why is that?
Larger elderly population, maybe fewer specialists overall compared to Taipei, so getting appointments can take longer.
Any specific examples?
Dentists. Apparently, you might need to book months, literally months in advance sometimes.
Whoa. Months for a dentist.
Yeah, it really highlights the need for more doctors and dentists in the region.
So care is there, but access, timely access, can be a hurdle.
Exactly. It's one of those trade-offs you weigh up. Less daily stress, maybe, but potentially longer waits for some services.
Okay, but it wasn't all hurdles and challenges. They found unexpected joys too, right?
Oh, for sure. A big one was how those community bonds really deepened over time. Remember the initial shock of city loneliness?
Yeah, feeling disconnected despite the crowds.
Well, in Taitung, they eventually found this genuine sense of people caring and looking out for each other.
Like that story about the swimming pool.
Exactly. The seniors all keeping an eye out for each other. It's small stuff, but it shows real connection.
That's lovely, that sense of mutual support.
It really is, something that can be harder to find in a more transient city environment.
What else stood out as uniquely Taitung?
The word of mouth thing, how much people rely on local recommendations over, say, Google reviews?
Really? So online reviews don't matter as much?
Apparently not always. They talked about a restaurant with kind of bad online reviews, but it's always packed with locals.
Huh. So the locals know the real deal.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
And another one, a breakfast shop owner who just didn't care about negative online comments because their local base was solid.
That's confidence. Trusting the community over the internet.
Yeah, it suggests a different kind of social currency based on real relationships.
Interesting. And what was that about a uniform culture?
Oh, yeah. They noticed lots of people wearing group-affiliated clothes, like class shirts, company polos, team gear.
More than you'd see in a big city.
Definitely. They linked it back to that tribal feeling, maybe? A way to show you belong to a certain group.
Even the local government gave out branded shirts.
Yeah, apparently they did at one point for public servants. It's about visibly showing that connection, that group identity.
Quite different from the focus on individual style in, say, Taipei.
Exactly. Different priorities. Belonging versus standing out, maybe?
And finally, the big one. Nature.
Absolutely central. You really have to appreciate and want to engage with the natural environment to thrive there.
Makes sense, given Taitung's landscape.
Yeah, and it shows in practical ways. Less need for fancy clothes or high heels, more focus on comfort and being outdoors.
So, putting all this together, the good, the bad, the surprising, what advice did they have for anyone thinking about making a similar move for potential island migrants?
Some really practical stuff. First, be ready for those strong community ties. Know the upside, the support, but also be aware it can mean less privacy, maybe getting drawn into local stuff.
Right. Go in with eyes open about the closeness.
Exactly. Second, prepare for cultural differences, especially that slower pace. You gotta adjust your own clock, be patient.
Don't expect Taipei efficiency.
Definitely not. Third, get real about the cost of living. Don't just assume it's dirt cheap. Do your homework, especially if you eat out a lot.
Check local prices. Budget properly. Good advice.
Fourth, if you have kids or specific health needs, really research education and healthcare access before you move. Plan for potential waits or competition.
Crucial due diligence. And the last one.
Embrace nature. You really need to genuinely enjoy the outdoors to get the most out of living in Taitung. If you're not an outdoorsy person, you might miss a huge part of the appeal.
Yeah, it's kind of fundamental to the lifestyle there, isn't it?
Totally. It's about matching your own preferences to what the place offers.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive. We've looked at why young people might swap city life for Taitung housing, escaping crowds, shifting values.
And then the realities they face. The adjustments, the slower pace, the interesting community dynamics, the actual cost of living.
Plus the challenges with schools and healthcare access, but also the real joys, like stronger bonds and that connection to nature.
And I guess the big aha moment, maybe for you listening, is seeing that this kind of move isn't just about geography, it's really about values, isn't it?
Yeah, about what you truly prioritize in life.
It's about choosing a path that feels right for you, deep down, even if it looks a bit weird or less ambitious to others. Remember that bit about maybe choosing the option that looks worse?
Right. Sometimes the less obvious path is the one that truly fits.
Exactly. It might lead somewhere more authentic for you.
And for you, the learner listening in, hopefully hearing these stories, highlights how many different ways there are to define a good life. It's not always about the corner office or the highest salary.
Yeah, there are so many other factors: community, environment, pace, connection. Understanding these different perspectives is so valuable when thinking about your own choices.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to chew on. In a world so focused on cities, on careers, what does a fulfilling life actually mean to you?
Yeah, what trade-offs are you genuinely willing to make for that fulfillment? Something to reflect on your priorities and what home really feels like for you.